News for now. I'm Nicole.
Mary had a little man. The fall.
We believe that all men are created equal.
To the magnificent mosaic that is America.
From radio beacon to radio beacon. I have a dream today. Change has come to America.
Believe me.
Help is on the way.
Knock, knock. Who's there?
It's a figment of your imagination.
Randi Rhodes Show.
Turn up your mind.
We need to rethink in 2021, going into 2022 and beyond, what we think of as an electable candidate.
Yeah.
There has been a lot of oxygen spent blaming the progressives, suggesting that perhaps our best bet is always a centrist candidate. I think we need to rethink that. And these midterms traditionally have been elections where you need to get the base out. You need to get them excited. And if Terry McAuliffe loses, then I think one of the lessons is that we didn't do that. We didn't get them out.
I'm sort of glad old Terry McAuliffe lost. I am. I'm glad. It's sad to lose, a state. It's sad to lose a state. But honestly, maybe this is the message. Maybe the message has finally gotten through to, the ones that pick, the pickers, right? The pickers who pick the candidates that were so sick of the retreads. What was I saying yesterday when I was closing the show? That we would love to have a modern, new kind of a candidate, Stacey Abrams, a person of color, a person of, progressive values, a person who wants to, break the mold. Either that or, has anybody looked into the possibility of just refusing to accept this? Let's start yelling about dead people and mysterious late-night drop-offs and sacks of votes and Italian satellites flipping the votes and bamboo in the ballots. Because that's what Republicans do. And they won. So before you smack yourself in the head, No, but I'm serious. I kept saying, listen, he's not. I couldn't understand how he won the primary with 50% of the vote. I just couldn't understand it. And then Linwood in Virginia yesterday volunteered that it was a very, very, very low turnout primary. No one shows up to pick the candidate. No one bothers to show up to pick. And then you end up with a centrist who's already been the governor, who is a DLCer, a corporate Democrat, a guy who, is a fundraiser, an extraordinary, money guy, a guy who couldn't have the conversation with the opponent about his stewardship of a globalist offshoring company called the Carlyle Group, couldn't have that conversation because he invested almost $1 million, Terry McAuliffe did, in the Carlyle Group. Who picks these people? That's the thing. So I don't know, either that or being crazy is going to have to become a viable strategy for us. So, maybe we want to look at the Looney Tunes that were gathered in Dallas yesterday. Have you seen any of this? The QAnon freaks in Dallas? Holy crap, man. And like I say, I'm going to show you this, but before I actually show you this and you smack yourself in the head, remind yourself, these are the people that won.
I am here because I believe at 11:55, JFK Jr. will be our new vice president, and President Trump will be our president. They will get that from a very much, at the time, on January 9th, the Insurrection Act was signed by President Trump, and in doing so, he could return the office, he could hand it over to a former president. And he handed it over to President John F. Kennedy. He did not die that day. And on my Q-mobile, if you go out there, you'll see a picture of President Trump and President John F. Kennedy, September 11, 2020, at the Pennsylvania Fields. And there's a picture on that Q-mobile of them.
JFK would have been like 103.
Great, he's 103.
Okay.
They won.
For a second, you're thinking, oh, man, does she not know? And then she goes in, no, he's not dead.
Oh,
you're
he's
like,
not dead.
This gets so much better when she says that.
Why do we have to be the ones who accept reality? Why are we the ones that have to live in reality? Why can't we live in fantasy world of our own making. Why can't we be those? I mean, we invented that concept, right? Anybody remember the 60s or the 70s or even the 80s? Anybody? Yeah, and then we sobered up. The drugs wore off, and now we're stuck with crappy everyday reality is where we are, You got to figure out what drugs that woman is on. You got to figure out what drugs MAGA is on. And, oh, never mind. I know. It's, it's...
Ivermectin, right?
It's ivermectin, crystal meth, a little bootleg internet Viagra, maybe a little Oxy. Do you know what I'm saying? And that doesn't appeal to me. Maybe I'll start smoking the pot. I don't know. Reality bites. It just does. But they have spent the last couple of years purging everyone from their party who won't subscribe to a belief system that is frankly psychopathic. And they won. They won. Listen, again, all these words that everybody is going to say or has said last night, this morning, this afternoon, tomorrow, the day after that, all of these, people that are, oh, we're in trouble. Oh, my God, we're in trouble. Ask them, did you really think that Terry McAuliffe was a great candidate? Did you think that was the best that the Democratic Party could produce? Did you? Because, I might be the only person that did not. I probably am the only person that did not. Also, let's just be really honest about this. All that people are seeing right now from the Democratic Party is infighting. All they're seeing is Joe Manchin and Kirsten Sinema trying to beat back progress. And, people are frustrated. And like I said yesterday, they're exhausted, especially working moms. They're exhausted. They are literally beside themselves with COVID and schools. And then they were sold this bill of goods, which is code word for, Southern strategy. They were told about critical race theory. They were told that, and McAuliffe was such I didn't even know that these ads were running in Virginia. I had no earthly idea. And then I came across one of them today, and this is the ad. These are the ads that Youngkin was running using Terry McAuliffe's own crap against Terry McAuliffe.
Glenn Youngkin's taking my words out of context.
Oh, is he?
Something you mentioned in Tuesday's debate is you said you don't believe parents should be telling schools what to teach. What did you mean by that?
Well, first of all, parents should be telling schools that they want their teachers to be vaccinated.
Do you think parents should have a say in the curriculum?
You don't want parents coming in every different school jurisdiction.
You alluded to parents staying out of this. We just want to make sure that we're understanding you correctly. What is your stance on that as far as what school agendas have to say for the kids?
First of all, this is determined by the State Board of Education and local school boards. And that's where it should be.
Do you still stand by your position that parents should not tell the schools what they should teach?
You do not want 25 parents picking books.
McAuliffe's reply?
We have a board of ed and we have local school boards who make the decisions about teaching. I'm not going to let parents come into schools. I don't think parents should be telling schools what they should teach. I don't think parents should be telling schools what they should teach.
Oh, God. I didn't even know that happened. I had no idea that he had said stuff like that at the debate. But they turned it into an ad and they ran it ad nauseum. And, this guy who just won, he has no policy. You understand that, right? He has zero policy proposals. All he ran on was critical race theory, swear to God, school choice, and qualified immunity for police officers. That was it. And that's because we ran a retread. That's because, I don't know if you saw this last night. Anybody? See, I was watching the World Series, to tell you the truth. Congratulations to the Atlanta Braves. It was a surprise that they would be in the World Series, so,
Let's just all sigh relief that the Astros cheating behinds did not win. That's all that's important.
Yes, but, they have a 72-year-old manager, the Astros do, who put all that behind them. So it really... Okay, Brett's not buying that either. It was a blowout last night. It really was, and I watched the whole thing. I wanted to see the last out. I wanted to see the whole thing. So I watched that. And then at 12:30, they told me that my prediction that McAuliffe was a bad candidate had come true. I don't know what people want me to say. I mean, that's just what it is. It's how it had to happen.
A things Randi at RandiRhodes.com.
Go for launch.
Speaking truth to power, the Randi Rhodes Show.
In Virginia, look, I think that Terry McAuliffe, what he said about parents not having a say about over, what happens in schools was definitely something that I think really hits parents right in the heart, right? Because most parents feel very stressed out, very concerned, like things are very out of control, and that they don't have control over their children's lives, whether it's what they're seeing on social media or what is happening in schools or what's happening with COVID or all of these other things. And so I do think that probably did play into it. It doesn't mean that he necessarily would have won if he didn't do it, but I definitely think it hurt him.
What's America telling us?
This is a brand new playbook for Republicans. That's the main takeaway. Youngkin was a very good candidate. He had the message, he had momentum. McAuliffe had the math, but the momentum overwhelmed the math. And so the big winner, of course, was Glenn Youngkin, but the big loser is Terry McAuliffe, obviously, Joe Biden, the Democrats, but also Donald Trump. Glenn Youngkin held him at arm's distance very artfully, and he was not invited to the party. So it's pretty clear what can happen for Republican candidates if they put Trump in the rearview mirror rather than on the windshield.
Can I just say, and Glenn Youngkin appears to have won. We have projected that race for Glenn Youngkin. Terry McAuliffe lost. It looks like a 12-point swing from 1 year ago in Virginia. Joe Biden won by 10, Glenn Youngkin winning by 2. In New Jersey, where, look, I think things look pretty good for Phil Murphy. It probably will be more than a 12-point swing. It'll be a bigger swing in New Jersey. So I'm not sure you can just put this all on Terry McAuliffe or all on schools. There seems to be something going on in the country.
Sure, there's an anxiety out there, and I think Youngkin particularly tapped into that among parents. I mean, parents just feel a loss of control, whether it's through COVID or, Kirsten, as you were saying, through social media. They just feel like they've lost the ability to have any control over their children's lives, and Youngkin really tapped into that.
Yeah, he did. And white ignorance cannot be underestimated in this here country. So that's what he was able to figure out. I guess psychological profiling or some other high-tech method to tell him, don't put forth any policy, none. Just get on the stump, talk about the frustration of parents, and they have no control over what their kids are being taught in school. Suggest that they're being taught something that isn't being taught. So rest easy, Virginia. Rest easy now, because there's no. You just elected a candidate who's going to ban something that isn't happening. That's what you did, and he has no other policies. You understand that? It's qualified immunity for police officers so that they can kill whoever they want, and never ever have to be taken into a civil settlement talk or a civil trial of any sort, right? And critical race theory will not be taught in Virginia schools. That was it, and it's not being taught. But never underestimate ignorance. Never. It's such a powerful weapon. It's an amazing thing. And if you get the most mealy-mouthed, un-Trumpified Trump supporter to stand on a stump and scream about, banning something that isn't happening, people will swing over to him, especially in this time period that we're in, where we have failed to move a piece of legislation through the House and the Senate and onto the President of the United States desk. And people are frustrated. They are pissed. They're peeved. They don't understand why the Democrats are fighting with the Democrats. They don't get why nothing's happened. They don't understand why the infrastructure bill passed in August and they haven't seen it pass, the House. They don't understand why Build Back Better is being argued against by Democrats. I mean, you want to say Manchin is a Republican. You want to say Sinema is anything but a Democrat, because I don't know what she is anymore. But the truth is that they are self-identified as Democrats, and they're the impediments to democratic progress. And Biden has an approval rating that is Trump had a lower approval rating than Joe Biden has now at the same point in his presidency, but not by much. I mean, I think Trump had 37% approval at this point in his presidency, and Biden has, 42% approval? Pathetic. It's so sad. It's just it's preventable. It's and honestly, I just, you know, if Democrats want to win, they either need Donald Trump on the ticket, or they need to do something for America, or they need not to have Terry McAuliffe on the ballot. These are your choices. These are your choices. And the crazy part was, I was listening, McAuliffe lost white women. He lost white women.
McAuliffe, he's slightly ahead with non-white voters, so
Right.
that was not his issue.
Right.
He's slightly behind with white male voters. That seems fairly typical for a Democrat. He's getting clobbered among white women voters. In 2020, white women voters went 50% for Biden, 49% for Trump. In this election, per the exit polls, they're going 57-43 for McAuliffe. That is not macro. That's issues. With education being the #1 thing on the minds of these voters, that means that Terry McAuliffe lost a very specific messaging war on race. And so I wonder what would be your advice to Democrats about how they should answer that. Is it a candidate that's different, that is somebody maybe newer, maybe a candidate of color, it's just somebody who really knows how to message that? What could they have done differently? Because that is not a good number for them going into next year.
No, it's a massive shift. I will say, Joy, some of it I think is, first of all, Youngkin portrayed himself as not a Trump Republican.
Right.
Okay. He ran as kind of almost like a Romney Republican for most of the race. There's no doubt that critical race theory is a weapon that he utilized to great effect. But I think a lot of those white women, they're now gone negative on Joe Biden's job performance. They're worried about the economy. They're worried about the pandemic. We've been, dealing with school issues for a year and a half in terms of kids in school. So I think it's a blend. I think the mistake Democrats would make is to say, we just lost 16 points with white women, which is a massive shift in 12 months.
Massive.
And it's only because of the race Glenn Youngkin ran. I think it's a blend. And I think you have to understand these are big, big warning signs that are blinking as bright as they can.
But unless and until somebody wants to discuss the fact that we couldn't have the debate that we wanted to have with, Youngkin or anybody from the Republican Party, because the Democrats that we're picking to be the flag bearers of our party for, executive branch, offices in the states, like a governor or an attorney general or a lieutenant governor, that they can't have the debate that they want to have with the Republican because they invested in the Republicans' business. It's so sad. It's so predictable. Nobody wants to have that conversation. Nobody wants to, in the media, they don't want to talk to you about the dark money that was poured into the school board. I don't know what to call it. The school board assault, the school board attacks, the school board effort. They don't want to talk about the dark money that went into, getting people to run to their school boards to scream and yell and cry So unless and until the media wants to actually explain to people what's going on, then this is kind of the result you can expect, because we didn't really own the Republican white women voter. We rented them. They just hated Trump.
Call in, connect. To speak to Randi, call 561-270-3844. 561-270-3844.
All right, meet the new mayor of New York City.
Practical is progressive. Practical is progressive. I am progressive in my policies. When you go online and see my 100 steps forward for New York City, you see how progressive I am. But we have to be practical. Let's not talk about closing our jail building when we leave the pipeline that feeds the jail open. 55% of our prisoners have a learning disability. Why aren't we talking about that? We can't talk about housing when we're not dealing with affordable and real housing for middle and low-income New Yorkers. We have to deal with public safety. When you talk about disbanding police departments when crime is increasing, you're not being progressive because you're not dealing with the safety of people who are impacted by that. So let's be practical and progressive.
Okay, so that's Eric Adams. He is the second black man who will become the mayor of New York City. We have Michelle Wu, who won in Boston. She is the first woman and person of color to ever be elected mayor of Boston. Here's a little snippet of her victory speech last night.
So one of asked me the other night if boys can be elected mayor in Boston. They have been, and they will again someday, but not tonight.
So Michelle Wu, the first woman and person of color to be elected Boston's mayor. She is the daughter of Taiwanese immigrants. She broke a 199-year streak of white male city leaders. Pittsburgh, they elected Ed Gainey. He will be Pittsburgh's very first black mayor, the very first ever. Eric Adams, as I mentioned, he'll be the second black mayor. Cincinnati elected Aftab Purival. Aftab Purival, who is a 39-year-old Democrat who started his political career 6 years ago as an outsider. He defeated an 82-year-old opponent, David Mann. He is Tibetan Indian. He is the son of immigrants. He earned his law degree and worked for Procter & Gamble before he successfully ran for Hamilton County Clerk of Courts in 2016. There was, Winsome Sears, who is a Republican. She will be the first black woman to be Virginia's lieutenant governor. She actually cemented her lead, I believe, by posing with a AK-47. She actually did that. This is the highest office a woman of color has ever won in Virginia's history. Just 10 black women in the United States have ever held statewide office in Virginia. Okay. Abdullah Hamid is the first Arab American and Muslim to win in Dearborn, Michigan. He is going to be the mayor of Dearborn. He's Lebanese, the son of Lebanese immigrants. And he dedicated his victory speech last night to, quote, any young girls or boys who have been ridiculed for their faith or ethnicity. Tyrone Garner will be the first black mayor of Kansas City, Kansas. Congratulations. This is his very first political race. He beat an incumbent. He is a former high-ranking police officer. He retired as deputy chief of police in June of 2019. He did not focus on getting tough on crime. He instead focused on economic equity. He focused on public services, especially for people in neglected neighborhoods. His platform was to be a forward thinker that wants to be a unifying force to facilitate opportunity, equity, and hope, and he prevailed in Kansas, no less. And Alvin Bragg, now this is a really important one. Alvin Bragg will become the new Manhattan District Attorney. He will replace Cyrus Vance Jr. Cyrus Vance Jr., as you may recall, is looking into Donald Trump's business practices and announced last year that he would not seek a fourth term, leaving that wide open. And so you have Alvin Bragg, who is a native of Harlem, woohoo, Chief Deputy Attorney General of New York State. He will now lead the office that is pursuing the investigation into Donald Trump's business. And also you have Bruce Harrell in Seattle. Bruce Harrell is the first Asian American and the second black person to ever lead Seattle. All the city's votes aren't counted yet, but he has a 65% lead in the tally so far. And so it looks like that will be the result of the election. So you see, everybody, you see when you run young people of color, when you run people who focus on economic equity, when you run progressives, wake up. When will the Democratic Party learn? Stop running yesterday's news in today's elections. Stop it! Now, the people here that work with me every day, they know how I felt about the McAuliffe thing. They all knew. Okay, they all knew. One person lives in Virginia. One person lives there. And so for that person, I set aside, a lot of what I was thinking about McAuliffe. And I shouldn't have done that. I did tell you that I had nothing to do with him in this way. Howard supported Terry McAuliffe, as you know, they're friends. Goes back to the Clinton years, goes back to the 90s, okay? And, there was Zoom calls and all this stuff, and it was all trolling for money. Everything was about money. It was all about money. It was all about support, and it was all about give us money, and it was all about... And I refused to be part of that. I never offered my show. I never offered an interview. Nothing. Not that they would take us up on it, because, to tell you the truth, Democrats, as a rule, especially moderate ones, especially conservative Democrats, especially third-way Democrats, corporate Democrats, DLCers, blue dogs, all the leftovers that don't even exist in a caucus anymore, they don't do shows like this one. They don't do any progressive talk shows. They just think that they're above it all. And meanwhile, you do have Republicans that will go on Steve Bannon's War Room show, okay? One of the most heinous, ugly, violent, endorsing, seriously sick, twisted, ideological outlets that we have, right alongside Tucker Carlson's fascist show. And they will go on those shows without a care in the world, without a thought in their head, without ever saying, I don't know if I want to be associated with this idea. No. But when it comes to us, when it comes to the national Democratic leaning progressive radio shows, television shows, whatever, oh no, we can't do that, because you might have an opinion about something that we're not completely down with, and we can't be associated with you. Listen, so for those people that are planning on running in 2022, your best hope is that Donald Trump gets his Twitter account restored. Okay? That's kind of what you're rooting for here, because you won't do media. You don't take social media seriously. You're so busy, batting away progressive ideas and being an impediment to progressive progress, which is what everyone in this country wants. I mean, when you look at Build Back Better and you look at the provisions like paid family and medical leave or prescription drug pricing, it's 90%. 90% of all Americans.
Clear. This is the Randi Rhodes Show. To speak with Randi, dial 561-270-3844. That's 561-270-3844.
Okay, you can smack yourself in the head all you want, but she's in Congress. She is. This is Marjorie Taylor Greene on Steve Bannon's, little TV internet thing.
They're saying, I don't want to take a vaccine. And I am so done with it. They are ruining our country. These vaccine Nazis. And I'm sorry, I know I'm using the word Nazi, and everybody gets mad when I say it, but that's exactly what they are. They're vaccine Nazis.
I'm vaccinated. That's all I'm saying. Okay? I am. Gary in Fort Lauderdale.
Oh, hi, Randi.
Hey, Gary.
It seems odd why you're so happy this day, laughing like you just spoke the pot after this horrible defeat in Virginia last night, because it is a horrible defeat, and it's also a harbinger of things that are probably to come. And I'm not happy at all about it, but that isn't what I called about.
Well, that's just one election, and, it was the one that the media decided to shine a light on. It was the one that was broadcast as being the one to watch, but it wasn't the only election last night. And so when I go through, the people of color who really did well last night in places like Kansas and Boston and New York, and, don't let that get swept under the rug. It's just Terry McAuliffe is a retread, and you know it.
Well, I only know it because you said it. But
you don't remember Terry McAuliffe as being a fundraiser for the Clintons or a former governor of Virginia, a one-term governor of Virginia?
I don't remember, but that's my shortcoming, not yours.
Right.
But here's what I wanted to say. I think there's a lot of reasons why Biden is doing so terrible in the polls right now, and why it's looking so grim for Democrats. And I'm going to tell you one of the reasons what I think it is. The fact that Trump and all of his partners in crime from January 6th and all the other terrible things that he's done that he's never had to pay a price for, the fact that he's not being indicted, he's not being persecuted, he's not being prosecuted, he's not being, like Steve Bannon, you just mentioned him a minute ago. What's he doing on TV having a show? He ought to be in a jail cell somewhere.
No, you're right.
And the fact that these people are all free and they're thumbing their nose at the justice system, and the Democrats who are in control are doing nothing about it, including Merrick Garland, I think makes this look useless and inept. And I think they're contributing to, like, this Joe Manchurian candidate from Virginia. They're contributing to the failure of the Democratic Party, and when it's gone this time, it's gone forever.
Yeah, I can't disagree with you. I can't, because the truth is that unless Donald Trump pays a very high price for treason, and unless he pays a very high price for the insurrection, unless he pays a very high price for the violence that he encourages, you're right. It's done. It come 2022. It's a actual wipeout. We lose small d democracy. After that. And I mean, all bets are off. The next 100 years in America are going to be dark. There's no question about it. But the message here for last night, just for last night, is stop running retreads. Stop running DLCers. Stop running corporate. That's why I opened the show with Julian Castro, because he's right. Run progressives. Run people who have a fight left in them. Run people who have policies that work for the American people. Run people who are passionate about what they're doing. Run people who are strong in their truth, who stand in their truth and aren't afraid of what the truth is, and know how to fix things and can deliver. I mean, this mealy mouth, they picked a guy in a vest who doesn't, right? Come on.
That vest was baloney. You say retreads. I still got to think, if Al Gore had won in 2000,
right,
or if Hillary Clinton would have beat Trump, the world would have been such a different place. And I still don't think that they're too old to make a contribution. I just don't think they have the gumption for it anymore.
Well, it takes a lot of energy to run for office. That's a fact. And it also takes a lot of money to run for office, and that's a fact. But the truth here is a very simple one. Stop looking to the past. Stop looking to the throwbacks. Stop looking to, people who already did their very best, and the system ran all over them, or the system beat them, or whatever it is, or they refused to wake up and smell the social media and lost. Okay, and these are provable mistakes that were made. And listen, I'm so sorry, but it's time for new. It's time for modern. It's time for policy people. It's time for passion. It's time for people who can do a stump speech and be slightly entertaining in the TV, social media.
Yeah, like Obama many years ago.
It's even more like it's more like somebody who can look good on television, like an AOC, or somebody who believes that investing in America is the America First agenda, and can actually say that to people, and can actually show that to people. But the first thing that we have to do is get a result here.
Yeah.
And we don't have a result here with the Build Back Better. And we don't have a result here with the infrastructure package. We don't have anything.
Nothing to show, just failure. Randy, let me ask you this. I can't see Biden doing anything but losing horribly in 2024. And I don't think Kamala Harris have a chance either. I used to think that Cuomo from New York, that he was going to be the guy that was going to step in, but they certainly managed to get him out of the picture. You know what I mean? So
he managed to get himself out of the picture.
Who knows? It's kind of like those bullets. Now, I know you don't like conspiracy theories, but somehow bullets got into a gun that, what's his name, Julie?
Alec Baldwin.
Alec Baldwin pulled the trigger on, And who was selling T-shirts for Alec Baldwin killing people 2 days later?
Junior.
Okay? So, add that up. But anyway, no conspiracy theory here. What I'm trying to say is, Biden's not the answer. Kamala Harris isn't the answer. Again, I thought Cuomo might have been. He's history. Give me a name of somebody who we might be able to hang a hat on in 3 years.
I don't know. It depends on what comes out of the Congress. It depends on, what kind of a result we get from Build Back Better, and like who could put their name. I mean, for all I know, it could be, Pramila Jayapal. Right?
No.
You never know. You don't know. It could be Stacey Abrams.
That I go for. Or even Andrew Yang. I love that guy.
No, Andrew Yang has left the Democratic Party.
You think?
No, he did. He left the Democratic Party.
I don't blame him the way he got abused.
Well, he did really poorly in New York. I mean, really poorly in New York. He insulted New Yorkers during the COVID thing. He really played it poorly. He did a bad job. He has a great sense of humor. He's very smart, but he played it poorly in New York, and he lost New Yorkers. And I just don't see that you could be the Democratic nominee and not have a blue state like New York supporting you when you live there and you ran there and you lost there. I don't see that happening.
That's a good point. But
there are
used
so
to
many
like him.
people on our bench that you don't even know yet. You haven't even paid attention to them yet because nothing's happened. They're all working right now. They got their heads down and they're working like dogs to try and win over the Manchurian Candidate. I love that name. I think that was the best one I've heard so far.
Yeah, I made that one up.
It's great.
And I believe that McConnell's behind him, because McConnell slowed down the wheels of progress. He's a master at just screwing everything up, just being a cog in the wheel. And he slowed everything up so that Biden's wasted an entire year getting nothing done other than getting out of Afghanistan, which I still think was a great thing, and keeping people alive from dying from COVID the way they did under Trump.
Let me just point this out. The slide in Biden's approval numbers began with the pullout from Afghanistan. Yeah. So you could actually say that the pullout from Afghanistan cost us Virginia. So from a Republican perspective, Gary, even the debacle that they started by invading Afghanistan decades ago has borne fruit for them in 2021 in Virginia.
When doesn't war benefit them?
So there you have it. So this is the kind of thing that we need somebody who understands this kind of thing to say out loud on the TV as they're campaigning, as they're running for president.
It ain't Joe Biden.
That's for sure.
Yeah.
That's for sure. But I don't think Joe Biden ever intended on more than one term. I just don't. I don't think that was his intention going in. So I don't think that you'll see Joe Biden running for president in 2024. Not unless, like I said, not unless Donald Trump gets his Twitter account back or Donald Trump is on the ticket. And then everything changes, right? Everything changes. In this weird way, this Youngkin guy, who is a globalist. I mean, he is the last person to believe in America first. He is the last human being in this here country that believes in America first. His globalist company, the Carlyle Group, literally buys American companies, offshores them to low-wage countries, turns around and sells them for 3 times what he paid for them because now the payroll is down to like nothing, and enriches himself. That's what he does. He's a globalist. It goes against everything that Republicans say they believe in. But if you put Donald, well, in this weird way, you can thank him for making us understand we can't run against Trump.
Mary had a little man. The fault. We believe that all men are created equal.
To the magnificent mosaic that is America.
From radio beacon to radio beacon.
I have a dream.
Change has come to America.
Believe me.
Help is on the way.
Knock, knock. Who's there?
It's a figment of your imagination.
Randi Rhodes Show. Turn up your mind.
Right now, I think in most of the United States Senate races that will determine control, I think you'd say maybe with the exception of New Hampshire, the lead candidates right now are Trump-like figures.
Right.
So in Republican primaries, that gate, I think, still slants in that direction.
Yeah.
And that's another reason I think to be more optimistic about the Democrats is they may nominate a bunch of people who aren't Glenn Youngkin. I can't believe I'm saying like Glenn Youngkin's some like ideal candidate. He's not. But I think they are going to come out of those Senate primaries owning everything. You know, all the Trump, not apologizing for anything. And by the way, someone who came across as less of a moderate voice might not have been able to pull off the critical race theory thing because they might just come across like a flat out racist.
Right.
Okay, I think Youngkin came across as somebody wrongly, in my view, but was able to convince voters, including a lot of those white women voters, that he's not a racist and he thinks race should be taught, but it just shouldn't be this critical race theory, which of course doesn't exist. So I think we have to look very carefully about the type of Republican candidate that comes out of House Republican and Senate primaries next year.
Absolutely. And this is why everybody's so depressed, because the media told you to watch Virginia, that Virginia was like the only election we were having last night. Oh, watch Virginia, Virginia this, Virginia that, Virginia this, Virginia. And, some people understood that critical race theory was code word for, busing. It's code word for integration. It's code word, it's the Southern strategy repackaged. And that this candidate that they had was a perfect package to have that code word, that coded message come from, because he was mealy mouthed, because he was wearing a little fleecy vest, because he seems so harmless, but he's a globalist, okay? He's a globalist, and his desires to get his hands on Virginia has everything to do with the fact that Virginia is the defense industry capital of America, and very little to do with your children and their school. This man doesn't give a damn. He also has no policies, right? He has no plan for Virginia, none whatsoever. But because he isn't Donald Trump, and because he will never be Donald Trump, he was able to do the Southern strategy, the Lee Atwater thing. Okay, the whole welfare queen thing, he was able to do it because he was so mealy-mouthed, because he seems so harmless. Well, he's far from harmless, this Youngkin dude is. But then the Democrats, no one showed up in the primary. No one showed up for the primary. And Terry McAuliffe was made the nominee by a tiny little sliver of Virginians who showed up in the primary. And primaries are everything. Primaries are going to determine who the nominee is, who you get to vote for, who actually is the vote against racist CRT nonsense, or who's going to be the nominee against, Donald Trump if he should choose to run. Now, what is good about Youngkin is that maybe the GOP figured out that you need a mealy-mouthed, mild-mannered racist who will do that racist Southern strategy thing without being seen already as a racist, which is Donald Trump's role in the Republican Party. He's the chief racist. Okay, and so maybe Youngkin did us this weird little favor in Virginia, showing the Republican Party that you can't possibly win with a guy like Donald Trump, especially if that guy is Donald Trump. And just maybe, they will make sure that Donald Trump isn't the nominee of their party, okay? That could be a possible side effect of this loss in Virginia. And it was a loss in Virginia, because not only did we lose the governorship in Virginia for the first time since 2009, it's now in the hands of a Republican, but I think there's still 10 assembly seats, 10 legislative seats that haven't been decided yet because it was so close. And so we could lose Virginians could lose their legislature, making everything harder, like voting. That could happen. I don't know that this guy cares that much about anything except business for himself and offshoring American jobs to low-wage nations to make money. I don't know what else he cares about, because he didn't tell anybody what he cared about on this campaign. He just simply said, critical race theory, critical race theory, critical race theory. And so his victory actually guarantees that something that isn't taught in any schools in America, except for grad schools and law schools, won't be taught in Virginia schools. That's it. That's all they have to show for their vote last night. So you want to know why I'm laughing? It's because it's so stupid. The whole thing is so dumb. But when you look at all the other elections that were held, progressives did really, really well in places where people actually live. All right, Paul in California.
Hey, Randy.
Hi.
I got a couple quick things to say about the election. For one, I stopped keeping count after 100 because it was really depressing. 37 people out of 100. These were targeted Democratic voters. not worth voting. They're not doing nothing. I'm not wasting my time.
I don't know what you're talking about.
They did not stand up. I called Virginia voters, targeted Democratic voters.
Oh, you called Virginia voters. Okay.
Yes.
I didn't hear
And they were Democrats. They were known Democrats. I did it with the DNC. And they're not excited. And the reason why is it's pretty simple. We have to join our local Democratic Party. The people that live in these red states are there and they're never going to move. And their ways aren't going to change because they're old. If we have young people join the local Democratic Party, we can start standing up progressive candidates. Then we win election. We have to fight populism with populism. We cannot try to fight populism with stale, day-old bread. It doesn't work. And the only way we're going to get fresh, new ideas in the Democratic Party is get fresh, new people to join.
We have good ideas in the Democratic Party. We have policies that work for the American people in the Democratic Party.
But we don't have enough people supporting those in the Democratic Party. The people support it, but the people actually in the party don't support it.
I would argue.
I'm in the Democratic Party.
I would argue that the reason why Virginia voters weren't excited when you called them is A, because you were telemarketing, and B, because Terry McAuliffe was the nominee.
I just said that. They weren't excited.
Right.
He didn't give them nothing to vote for. Right. I mean, he could have brought up, hey, the Republicans paid to offshore your jobs, and now they not only pay.
But that has nothing to do with the voters.
It has everything to do with the local Democratic Party. They pick the candidate.
No, the people pick the candidate when they don't show up to pick the candidate.
No, I'm sorry. No.
Yeah,
the local Democratic Party stands up candidate. I interview candidates all the time. I know what I'm talking about. You don't get on the ticket without the party. No. You can get on there somewhat, but no. You have to have the local party backup.
Are you talking about money?
No, I'm talking about getting people to vote for you. The only reason why John Gary Mundy is my representative is because we voted for him. Now, if John Denver Money did not have all the people, all the Democrats in the third voting precinct stand him up and vote for him to be on the ticket, he doesn't get on the ticket. He can run an outside candidate, but he's not going to be a Democrat. He's not going to have the Democrat support. Your local party stands up the local ticket. I mean, we had a big-time Republican problem on the Board of Supervisors. We got in there, we put up great candidates. Now we have a Democratic board. Things are getting done because we identified the problem. Lousy candidates, put up great candidates, problem solved. It's not brain science. It's not like it's really hard to figure out. Progressive wins elections, but progressives can't get on the ticket unless they have local Democratic Party support.
Well, we have 96 progressives in the House.
All things Randy at RandyRhodes.com.
Go for launch.
Speaking truth to power, the Randi Rhodes Show.
The only reason that we're talking about critical race theory is because Glenn Youngkin had 18 months to convince people that he was not a fire-breathing, horns out of his skull racist.
Right.
You can only talk about critical race theory if you present yourself as the kind of neutral white guy who's like, I don't dislike brown people. I just think this is going a little too far. So it only works if you've been able to present yourself as neutral or non-hostile on race issues. That's not something that a lot of Republicans are very good at. And I saw somebody put this very eloquently online. They said, look, Glenn Youngkin ran pretending to be Larry Hogan. He's going to govern like Mike DeWine. But to his base, they think he's Ron DeSantis. And that's what this is. It was a very sneaky triangulation. Because if you run on critical race theory and you're a screaming MAGA hat wearing maniac, then you're going to lose those suburban people because they don't want to be associated with that. Right. So I think it's only an effective strategy if you've been able to put 4 or 5, 6 other things in line. Anybody else who runs on critical race theory, if you don't have the proper candidate to promote the message, it's not going to get you anywhere.
And that's what that's the entire, tip of the hat to Youngkin's campaign. Maybe it taught the Republicans that you can't have a Donald Trump out there running. You can't have a Marjorie Taylor Greene selling critical race theory ideas or calling, people who want a vaccination for their children vax Nazis. Okay, it's not going to play in Peoria. It's not going to play to white suburban women. Okay, it isn't. And, you can see that that's what he tapped into last night. He tapped into white suburban women who we don't own. We don't own them as Democrats. We only rented them. And the only reason why we were able to rent them for a presidential election is because they hated what Donald Trump sounded like, what Donald Trump was advocating for, the violence they saw, the racism they heard. It was offensive to them. So kudos to white suburban women for being offended by Donald Trump's racism. But know this, if you dress up a wolf in sheep's clothing and he does the Southern strategy thing, he could win them back. And that's what you should learn from Virginia last night. Now, I'm going to tell you that the reason why, this is so frightening is because we have to have a midterm election. And we had one after Barack Obama became president, 2 years after he became president, and we lost the House. We lost the House and we never got it back. And so while we were able to do some stuff with a progressive president, we weren't able to do much stuff because we lost the House. We lost the Senate in 2014, 2015. But I mean, honestly, the answer to the dilemma is not to elect less Democrats in the midterm. It's to elect more Democrats in the midterm. Even the Manchin has said, hey, listen, if you think that people are for, negotiating the price of prescription drugs, if you think people are for paid family and medical leave, elect more progressives. And that is the answer. That is the answer. Progressives, not centrists, not DLCers, not corporate Democrats like Joe Manchin, and certainly not enigmas and like, mercurial people like Kirsten Sinema. I mean, she's erratic. We don't even know what she thinks about anything. Joe on Long Island.
Hi, Randy. How you doing?
Hey.
Listen, unless we fix the media, unless we get the fairness doctrine back, we ain't going anywhere.
Okay, so
we're talking to
the fairness doctrine.
Randy, I listen to you every day. I am a Democrat DNA, but a lot of people aren't. And it's hurting our country.
Okay, so the fairness doctrine isn't what you think it is. It doesn't provide for equal time. It doesn't mean that if I'm on the air for 2 hours, that a Republican can be on the air for 2 hours. That is not what it means. It looks much more like the State of the Union. You know how the State of the Union is given by the president who is president, and then the opposing party of that president gets 5 minutes at the end to rebut, right, to have a response. That's the fairness doctrine. That's a remnant of the fairness doctrine. So
I understand that, Randy, but if people are only listening to...
Okay, but it doesn't work like that. Okay, so what I'm saying to you is, here's what we have to remember. We have to remember that things that changed the makeup of the Democratic Party, things that took the majority away from us back when Obama was president, for instance, were things that were total media creations, like the Tea Party. It's always dark money that's able to promote these really rancid, violent ideologies through media and largesse with media companies, okay? And so if we have candidates who won't come on this show, which is, this show doesn't scream... about Nazis and vaccine. We don't give disinformation. But if they won't get serious about using the media they have, listen, I'm going to tell you a story. Okay, here's my story. So this goes back to the caller that we just had from California, who was calling voters in Virginia. So that's telemarketing, right? And that's a really lame thing to do. No one likes it. I get those calls all the time because I live in a household where somebody actually gives money to Democrats. So I get these phone calls all the time. All right. The other day, I guess this was the beginning of last week. No, it was like the end of it doesn't matter. So last week I get a phone call from a guy in Florida. Obviously, you can see the caller ID number. This is a guy with a 954 area code. So that's Fort Lauderdale, and it's Fort Lauderdale. Miami is 305. Fort Lauderdale's 954. Palm Beach is 561. Okay, so you know where the call's coming from. The guy was literally working for, out of the goodness of his heart, a volunteer for the Democratic National Committee. And he was making phone calls on behalf of somebody that I support, Raphael Warnock in Georgia, who has to run for re-election because he won in a special election, as we all know. And so I said to this guy, listen, he started reading his script, which is so lame. It had nothing to do with anything. And I'm like, totally briefed up, as anybody who watches this show or Free Speech TV is. And so I start telling him, listen. I know the script. I understand. And I want to thank you for volunteering, to do these phone calls, blah, blah, blah. But I can't vote for Raphael Warnock. I'm not in Georgia, as you know, because you're dialing the phone. So let me make an offer to you to bring back to whoever you're working with. Tell them that my name is Randi Rhodes and that I have a television show on Free Speech TV where we are in 40 million American homes. Now, I'm not saying that I can deliver 40 million Americans to my broadcast, but I know that we're distributed in 40 million American homes, and that I'm offering free media to your candidate. I'm offering a chance for Raphael Warnock to talk to progressives in his state, to talk to progressives around this country to make the best case he can for progressive policies. Oh, it doesn't work like that, he says. It doesn't work like that.
Call in, connect. To speak to Randi, call 561-270-3844. 561-270-3844.
Do you know who this guy is?
No clue.
No. That's Jack Ciattarelli, the GOP candidate for governor. He once led an effort to ban swearing.
You're shitting me. He did what? No f***ing way.
What
the f***? Aw, that's kind of nice.
Really?
No. This is fucking New Jersey.
We can't let that win.
Okay, so just know this. I think Phil Murphy, the incumbent Democratic governor of New Jersey, will prevail in this particular arena. However, this guy who nobody ever heard of, this guy who was, like anti-swearing in freaking New Jersey, he is within the proverbial hair, okay, of Phil Murphy's victory. I mean, people are showing up and voting for anything with an R after its name. They don't even know who this guy is. But they're pretty sure that an R is better than a D. Why is that? Failure to deliver. Failure to deliver. Failure to make a difference in people's lives. And that is a humongous problem. And it's our problem because we have two senators named Joe Manchin and Kyrsten Sinema who are the impediment to everything. And we run really bad candidates. There is your issue in a nutshell. There it is. Just point blank. All these words that people are going to say, all this stuff, it's bad. It's bad because we have a president with a very low approval rating who has not been able to get Joe Manchin and Kyrsten Sinema to sign off on his policies that would benefit children, child tax credit, pre-K, that would benefit seniors, Medicare expansion to include hearing aids, Medicare negotiating the price of prescription drugs, paid medical and family leave, which 90% of Americans of all stripes are for. And the answer is not less progressives. The answer is more progressives. The answer is not more centrists like Joe Manchin and whatever Kyrsten Sinema is today. The answer is more progressives. Leanne in California.
Hi, Randy. How are you?
All right.
I agree with you. The answer is more progressive, but we did that already with Obama. We got him, and guess what? We had the White House, we had the Senate, we had the Congress, and we still didn't get anything done.
We had it for about
Merrick
5
Garland.
minutes. We had the House and the Senate for 5 minutes. And
But he sat on Merrick Garland for a whole year. We could have had
No. Oh, man, your recall of historical context is a little bit wanting. So Obama came into office in 2009. He inherited a global financial meltdown, right? We had to get a stimulus package out the door. Okay, and so we were able to do that. And right after that, he started doing the healthcare portion of his agenda, okay? And as soon as he started doing the healthcare portion of his agenda, healthcare insurance companies, industry executives, the big pharma money, all went into forming this media thing called the Tea Party, okay? And all of a sudden, the Tea Party was talking about grandma and death panels and putting Obama's face on posters with a witch doctor costume on and a bone through his nose. And we lost the House. We lost it. We had from 2009 to 10, the Speaker of the House was Nancy Pelosi. Beginning in 2011, all the way through to 2018, we had John Boehner as the Speaker of the House. And then after Boehner left, we had Paul Ryan as the Speaker of the House. We lost the Congress. You cannot spend money without Congress.
What about Merrick Garland? Why did he say
we
wait
lost
so
the
long
Senate too? Mitch McConnell became the majority leader in 2015. He controls everything in the Senate.
Well, okay.
So the answer is more progressives, not to blame a progressive president when there was a media concoction of the Tea Party that attacked him brutally to the point where we lost the House in 5 minutes. This is about to happen to us again. We have the House now, we have the Senate now, but we have razor-thin majorities. Well, everyone's going to sit there and bitch and moan and say, oh, well, it wasn't good enough. It wasn't enough. It didn't happen and blah, blah, blah. And they're going to change parties and nothing's going to get done because the Republicans don't govern. The Republicans are an impediment to governing.
Okay, point number 2. This is also about Donald Trump. All the people that voted for Youngkin, they will vote for anybody that has a Republican after their name.
Except for Donald Trump. Except for Donald Trump.
Election, right, that they lost, and no matter who it is, if it's not Donald Trump, they're going to vote for them if they're a Republican. That's what this is about.
So I don't know that that's true. I mean, if you put up Ted Cruz or if you put up Josh Hawley or any of these wannabes that want to run for president, I don't know that that works either with suburban white women. I don't think that they're going to want a Youngkin. They're going to want a mealy-mouthed, lily-livered, mild-mannered guy who dresses himself up as harmless but is really a wolf in sheep's clothing. They're not going to vote for a Cruz. They're not going to vote for a Hawley. And our best bet is what I'm saying all day, is that Donald Trump gets his Twitter account back and Donald Trump announces for president. That is our best bet.
Yeah, what if he doesn't? Then what do we do?
Then we're going to end up with Ted Cruz, or we're going to end up with Josh Hawley, or who? Who?
Well, then
DeSantis.
we're screwed because if
or Ron
that
DeSantis.
guy's gaining
Right.
traction. People love that guy.
Right. That's what's coming.
Well, that's sad. That's sad for our country. That's all I have to say.
It's not sad. I'm giving you good news. I'm telling you good news that if they run these fire breathers, it will be a turnoff. Women are not stupid. They've already been to that rodeo. And Ted Cruz, they're going to have on an endless loop saying, we will not go quietly into that night, and organizing an insurrection. And Josh Hawley giving the insurrectionists a thumbs up. Don't you get it? They have burned the goodwill bridge. Nobody trusts them anymore. The only reason why Glenn Youngkin won is because he dressed himself up as a sheep.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Right. And the answer is more progressives. Don't come at me with but Obama was the progressive and he didn't get anything done. First of all, Obama got a lot done. He got he reversed the global financial meltdown that Bush actually caused with his banking deregulation crap. Also, Bill Clinton was responsible for that too, right? He got a stimulus package out the door, and he got the ACA. He also got Kagan on the Supreme Court, Sonia Sotomayor on the Supreme Court. You know, you just don't understand what you're saying when you say he didn't do anything. We didn't do our job. We didn't give him a continued House majority. He had a majority in the House of Representatives for all of what, 11 months? And then all of a sudden, Pelosi had to hand the gavel over to Boner, who is now... Boner is a salesman for medical marijuana. Okay, that's what he is. Well, good for him. He was a drunk before. Maybe this will get him off the wine and get him on the marijuana. I don't know. But after 2011, Boehner was the Speaker of the House. He was the Speaker of the House from 2011 till 2015. In 2015, 16, and 17, you had Paul Ryan as Speaker of the House. And in 15, 16, and 17, Mitch McConnell was the majority leader in the Senate. That's the impediment to progress. They don't govern. They stop it.
This is the Randi Rhodes Show. To speak with Randi, dial 561-270-3844. That's 561-270-3844.
I'm pleased to announce that an agreement has been reached to lower prescription drug prices for seniors and families in the Build Back Better legislation. Fixing prescription drug pricing has consistently been a top issue for Americans year after year, including the vast majority of both Democrats and Republicans who want to see a change because they simply cannot afford their medications. We've heard this from people across the country who have serious illnesses and can't afford their medicine. What a painstaking position to be in. It's horrible. Today, we've taken a massive step forward in helping alleviate that problem. By empowering Medicare to directly negotiate prices in Part B and Part D, this deal will directly reduce out-of-pocket drug spending for millions of patients every time they visit the pharmacy or doctor. It will cap out-of-pocket spending at $2,000 per year, ending the days where a life-changing diagnosis could mean thousands upon thousands of dollars in new expenses. And it will reform the entire industry to stop price gouging. And it will reform the entire industry to stop price gouging and change both drug company and health insurer incentives to make sure our country's drug pricing system benefits patients, not corporations.
I'm telling you, you know, we have policies that people love. And I mean all people love them. So this is something that they just negotiated that Manchin and Sinema say they're supportive of, and that is to negotiate the price of prescription drugs in Medicare Part B and D for senior citizens and for families who are not on Medicare market prices, but only for 10 drugs, only for 10 of the most common expensive drugs. Now, listen, Big Pharma is out there. Big Pharma is going to give talking points to the Republicans. Then the talking point is going to be, well, if you don't let us make billions of dollars and pay ourselves billions of dollars, we won't have research and development. Americans won't get the cutting edge drugs that they're used to get. And this is a lie. This is an absolute lie. Only in America do we pay 250% more for our prescription drugs than any other country in the world. And I just want to play you a little bit of Katie Porter, everybody. Katie Porter, big, wonderful piece about Katie Porter in Vanity Fair this month. Now, she's a protege of Elizabeth Warren, believe it or not. And Katie Porter is a genius. Okay, she's a Harvard grad. She's able to take very complicated things and make them so accessible to people who don't toil in her arena or who don't have Ivy League educations like me. So here's Katie Porter at a pharma hearing back in May talking about how much money actually does go into research and development.
Mr. Gonzalez, how much did AbbVie spend on litigation and settlements from 2013 to 2018?
I don't have that number offhand. I won't be happy to give it to you.
Okay, $1.6 billion, $2.45 billion on R&D, $1.6 billion in litigation and settlements. What about marketing and advertising? How much does AbbVie spend on that?
Well, marketing and advertising, we spend about $4 billion a year.
Yep, 4.71 billion. How about executive compensation, 2013 to 2018?
2013 to 2018, it's probably on average about $60 million a year.
Try 334 on for size. Now, how much did AbbVie spend on stock buybacks and stock buybacks and dividends to enrich your shareholders from 2013 to 2018?
Well, stock buybacks, if you actually look at just pure stock buybacks, it would be about $13 billion.
Oh my God. Stock buybacks and dividends is the question, sir.
Dividends, and have to come back with a number for that over that period of time.
$50 billion. Oh
my God.
So, Mr. Gonzalez, you're spending all this money to make sure you make money rather than spending money to invest in, develop drugs, and help patients with affordable life-saving drugs. You lie to patients when you charge them twice as much for an unimproved drug, and then you lie to policymakers when you tell us that R&D justifies those price increases. The big pharma fairy tale is one of groundbreaking R&D that justifies astronomical prices. But the pharma reality is that you spend most of your company's money making money for yourself and your shareholders. And the fact that you're not honest about this with patients and with policymakers, that you're feeding us lies, that we must pay astronomical prices to get innovative treatments is false. The American people, the patients, deserve so much better.
She is amazing. Amazing. This lie that if we don't pay 250% more for our prescription drugs here in America versus the rest of the world, like the UK or France or, Italy or Denmark or what, because they negotiate the price that their national health services pay for prescription drugs for their citizenry. Only we don't. Only the United States prohibits negotiation with big pharma. And they feed these talking points, the lobbyists do, to our senators and House members who then repeat them. And the talking point on prescription drug prices is, if we got to pay less for our prescription drugs, like for 100-year-old drug, 100, like insulin, if we capped the amount that anybody had to pay for insulin at, let's say, $35, we wouldn't get any research and development for diabetes, which is a lie, because the smallest share of the money that Big Pharma spends, the smallest sliver on their books, is for research and development. And in fact, they spend 10 times more on stock buybacks. They spend 10 times more on dividend payments. They spend more on CEO salaries and executive salaries and perks. They spend more on litigation, and they spend much, much more on advertising. Now, why do we bring up advertising? Well, corporate media, if you watch it, every ad you see is for big pharmaceutical companies. And so they won't tell you this because it would cut into their sales manager's salary. It's a game that's being played with you. So here we got a weak prescription drug benefit. It's weak. Okay, it's not the greatest thing ever, but it is going to set a precedent. And the precedent that it would set, if it passed, is that you can negotiate in America with Big Pharma on the price that Medicare pays for prescription drugs. It's a start. Now, this particular plan is only to negotiate 10 drugs, and it doesn't even kick in until 2025. which means, yeah, I know, which means in the midterms, people aren't going to see it or feel it. But after 2025, now, this is another little, a ploy that, the lobbyists actually, set up these obstacles for Americans to enjoy the benefit that was negotiated, right? They do it so that people will say, well, I didn't feel it, so get rid of it, right? So they don't let it kick in until 2025. And then in 2028, this is the plan, in 2028, they'll add another 10 drugs that we can negotiate the price for. In the meantime, Medicare will cap out-of-pocket costs at $2,000, which is a godsend for people on Medicare because there's this great big donut hole and you end up spending tens of thousands of dollars a year, especially for the newfangled ones, the biologics and the DMARDs and all the real fancy ones that you see advertised on the TV all the time. The Humiras, that's a biologic. The Tremfyas, that's a biologic. Cosentyx, biologic. Then you got your DMARDs, okay, and it's mostly for cancer and arthritis treatment, whether it's psoriatic arthritis, rheumatoid arthritis. That's what all these drugs, and they are so freaking expensive. So it's a start. And I'm telling you, if you don't stay with it, if you don't, keep going, if we don't build into the system relief for us, and you give up on it, we'll never get there. In fact, we'll never get to vote again.
Mary had a little man. The fall. We believe that all men are created equal.
To the magnificent mosaic that is America.
From radio beacon to radio beacon. I have a dream. Change has come to America.
Believe me.
Help is on the way.
Knock, knock. Who's there?
It's a figment of your imagination.
Randi Rhodes Show.
Turn up your mind.
Well, I can't think of anything that we would rather be watching than the cross-examination of the 17-year-old medic, high school dropout medic, Kyle Rittenhouse, who decided that he should carry as a medic an AR-15 across state lines illegally. I will tell you, this is the cross-examination portion of the trial. They did put Kyle on the stand. You may have seen it this morning. Under direct examination, Kyle Rittenhouse's position is, I'm scared. I was scared then. I'm going to break down in tears and tell you how scared I was. I didn't do anything wrong, even though I killed 2 people and blew off the biceps of a 3rd person. And the judge is like, you will not bring up anything about this kid going to bars with his mother and being surrounded by Proud Boys, giving the white power sign to the TV cameras while wearing a free as F t-shirt. Don't you bring it up. This actually, there were fireworks in the court today. The jury was removed, but the fireworks in the court came from the judge, who doesn't care that the defense, when questioning Kyle Rittenhouse, literally opened the door to his white supremacist behavior. And so that means that even though they ruled at the beginning that prior behavior couldn't come in, when you talk about it on the stand under oath, you've opened the door to have it discussed and questioned. And the judge is having none of it. So there were fireworks today. We'll go over what happened, but I need to listen to the cross-examination of Kyle Rittenhouse, whose position is, I did nothing wrong. Yeah. Okay.
If I can use the pointer.
Okay, so this is the prosecutor,
crossing
the assistant DA.
On the
Thomas
west side of Sheridan Road, you are crossing south across 60th Street here, heading across the police line, which had barricaded across 60th and Sheridan. Fair?
Yes.
You understood at this moment that you are now entering a crowd of whatever you want to call them, protesters, demonstrators. Your attorneys called them rioters or looters or whatever. That's who you're going to now be part of. You're going to be in that crowd, right?
I was walking through, I announced myself as friendly and that I was there to help them.
Because you had to do that to warn these people that, hey, I'm on your side, right?
I told them that I was friendly.
Because if you didn't say that, you were worried they would see you as hostile, correct?
Can you re-ask your question?
Sure.
I'm trying to
Absolutely.
understand.
If you're going to go up to Dominic Black or Ryan Balch, you don't need to tell them you're friendly because they know that you're friends, right? We don't tell this to our friends.
Yeah.
We say friendly to people that aren't our friends, people that might be hostile to us, right?
Yeah, I said it to them because they were throwing rocks at me, and when I told them I was friendly, they stopped throwing rocks at us.
And to be accurate, they were throwing at the Bearcats, not at you.
Yeah.
One of them hit one of the armored vehicles and bounced off towards you and Mr. Balch, right?
Yeah.
It didn't do any damage to that armored vehicle, did it?
Not that I'm aware of.
I mean, can you imagine trying to harm an armored vehicle with a rock? That's pretty hard to do, right?
Yeah.
But no one was throwing rocks at you, but you were kind of in the ricochet line of fire. It's fair to say?
Yeah.
So you wanted to let these people know that, hey, I might look like I'm on the other side, but I'm really friendly. Fair?
I wasn't on any side, but...
I didn't say that. I said that you might appear to them. I mean, that was what you were worried about, right? When you said friendly? And I notice you looking over at your attorney a lot. Can you... I'm trying to ask you. When you are doing...
He's looking directly at Mr. Binger, and I'm behind him. He accused Mr. Rittenhouse of looking at his attorney. Does he want him to look at the ceiling?
I'll continue, Your Honor. You, at this very moment, announced yourself as friendly because you were worried that the people on the other side of that street would see you as hostile. Fair?
I can't tell you how I think they would see me, but I just told them I was friendly.
And I want to make sure you understand my question, because I was asking you what you thought when you said this. You said you announced yourself as friendly because you thought to yourself at that very moment, I'm walking into a group that is hostile to me. Isn't that true?
It looked hostile. They were throwing rocks at the squad car, not the squad cars, the armored police cars.
And you felt it was necessary to tell them friendly, 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 so that they wouldn't do anything to you. Fair?
Yes.
Let's continue the video. There's a person that comes up to you carrying a skateboard. Do you see that?
I do.
And he's got some fire extinguishers slung over his shoulder?
Yes.
And he says something to you about something putting out fires, and you respond, they know, they know. Did I understand what you said correctly there? They know?
That's what I just heard, but I don't remember that interaction very well, other than helping the guy after with the shoulder.
And that's going to come up in a second here, but when you're talking to this individual about the fire extinguishers, do you remember anything about that conversation?
It's hard to recall, but I think it was about fires, that they were putting out fires.
Okay. And when you said they know, who's they?
I don't recall.
Do you have any idea what you were talking about?
I don't.
It seems to me, Mr. Rittenhouse, that this person is suggesting he's going to go put out some fires, and you're sort of assuring him that you don't need to, it's okay. Would that be a fair interpretation or no?
No.
Okay. But you don't remember what was going on?
I don't remember the conversation, what it was about, other than fires, and I don't recall it.
This is one of the guys in the group that you later got your fire extinguisher from, right?
No.
Okay, we'll get to that in a second. Let's continue. Brian, can you continue?
You good? It just fucking stunk.
Well, pepper boy never hurt nobody. It was literally just like, it's a little spicy, that's all. I was like, oh shit. It was really hot. Yeah, well, salsa. Could you please not? Does anybody need medical? I think someone's got some medical weed, I'll tell you that. Does anybody need medical?
Yeah, he looks like a medic to me.
You're walking around asking people if they need medical. And you talked earlier about treating a couple, I don't know, somebody at the 59th Street car source, right?
Minor injuries.
Minor injuries. When you were walking around outside that property, when you're out in the street announcing what you're announcing, did anybody respond and say, yeah, I need help from you?
Yes.
When was that?
I don't recall an exact time, but somebody cut their finger open and I gave them some gauze and some bandage tape.
Was that before or after this? Do you remember?
Before.
All right, we're going to have to take a break here and rejoin it on the other side. He looks like a medic to me with his little homemade kit and his AR. Yeah.
All things Randi at RandiRhodes.com.
Go for launch.
Speaking truth to power, the Randi Rhodes Show.
I got to tell you, this whole thing is infuriating. I mean, the way that they're treating this 17-year-old high school dropout as a legitimate medic / police officer / security guard / and he's, I did nothing wrong. I did nothing wrong. It's unbelievable to me that you don't see real medics, real police officers, real security guards saying, who the hell, this kid is giving us a bad name. You know what's really interesting about all this? The only people that died, the only people that were shot to death during any protests last summer are the ones that he killed. Yeah. All right.
Balch for the first time 3 or 4 hours before this video, right?
Yeah.
You had just met Jason Lekowski for the first time, just actually only a few minutes before this, right? Because he didn't get in until 10:45.
Correct.
So at this point in the video, I don't know, this is probably about 11:30 or so at night?
I met him about 35 minutes prior to that.
And probably had only spent, what, 10, 15 minutes at all in the same location as Jason Lekowski before you walk south?
Yes.
So, again, Jason Lekowski was someone you'd never met before that night.
Correct.
And you barely spent any time with him that night, correct?
Correct.
And of course, the people up on the roof, other than Dominic Black and Nick Smith, you didn't know any of them before that night either, correct?
I knew Dominic Black and Nick Smith, but the people on the...
I misspoke their names.
Sorry.
Dominic Black and Nick Smith.
I knew, those are the two people I knew on the roof.
Other than that, you didn't know anyone else before this night, fair?
Correct.
Okay. Now, when this little interaction that we've just watched happens, you're still walking with Ryan Balch, aren't you?
I'm not. I thought I was at the time, but seeing hindsight view, I'm not.
When you decided to cross 60th with Ryan Balch, you two talked about the fact that if you get separated, to go back to the 59th Street car source, right?
I don't recall that conversation happening.
But you tried to do that, didn't you?
I did.
Because you felt like if I'm out here by myself, that's not good. I need to head back, right?
Yes.
And you also talked to Ryan Balch about the fact that when you get out into this crowd, keep your mouth shut. Don't antagonize them. Didn't Ryan talk to you about that?
No, we didn't talk about that.
So at this very moment, you're telling us you've lost track of Ryan
Balch? A little bit ahead, but around that time, yes.
let's continue the video. Pause. You have just walked off the screen, heading east across Sheridan Road to the Ultimate gas station, correct?
Yes.
And at that point in time, you don't know where Ryan Balch is, correct?
When I stop and look around, yes.
And instead of deciding to head back at this point, you go over to Ultimate Gas and you talk to some folks over there. Fair?
I walk over to the Ultimate gas station, I walk around, and I try to see if I can find Mr. Balch.
And you couldn't do that?
No.
So then you decided to approach the police line and cross back, correct?
Yes.
Because you decided your best course of action at that point would be to return to the same group that you'd been with, correct?
Yes.
Now, at that moment in time, the police had pushed everybody south of 60th, right?
Sorta. I don't really know if there were...
Did you say south to 60th?
I said south of 60th.
Oh, okay.
Let's go back a little bit. We watched that interview with Richie McGinnis where he first comes up to you and talks to you, right?
Mm-hmm.
Do you remember that?
Yes.
And you're standing there at the 59th Street property, aren't you?
I am.
And he talks to you about what you're going to do, and you're going to run out and help people, things like that, right?
Yes.
At that point, the police had already passed with all the Bearcats and MRAPs and armored vehicles, right?
That's what it looks like, yes.
And they had established a line on 60th and Sheridan, correct?
Yes.
And they pushed all of the protesters, demonstrators, rioters, whatever you want to call them, all of them south of 60th, correct?
I don't know if I can honestly answer all of them. I don't know if... I believe there are some people still north down Sheridan and in the... across the street.
So were there... I mean, we saw a crowd earlier of lots of protesters out in the street. That group, the numbers had dwindled quite a bit.
Yes.
Okay. So after the police move everybody south of 60th, there's no more actual threat to the 59th Street car source, is there?
I don't know.
Well, at that moment in time, what imminent threats did you see to the 59th Street car source property?
I don't know.
Do you remember seeing any protesters out in the street in front of the 59th Street car source after the police pushed everybody south of 60th?
I believe there were some across the street, but not many. I can't recall completely.
And that was just 2 or 3 people, right?
I don't know how many people.
None of those people came across the street to the 59th Street car source, did they?
I don't know. If they did, I would have walked off by now.
So you didn't see them come across the street?
I did not.
Fair to say that after the police pushed everybody south of 60th, you never saw any people threatening that property, correct?
I didn't see anybody.
And your goal that night, you took it upon yourself to protect the 59th Street property, correct?
The owners asked.
Sure. But you were going to station yourself at that property to try and protect it from damage. Fair?
The car source locations, yes.
And once the police had pushed everybody south of that, there was no more danger.
At that car source location, yes.
Okay. So, why not go home at that point?
Yeah.
Because the police were still pushing people back, and then they were backing up, and I was still helping people provide medical first aid.
Okay, so the police had established the line at 60th with their Bearcats at that point, right?
Yes.
And there was no indication that they were going to reverse and back up and move back north again that you saw, correct?
No, they did it earlier in the night where they did the same thing.
Right, but this is at 11:30, 11:40 at night, and they've established that, the police have established that line, and as far as you can tell, it's going to stay there, right?
I don't know.
And you talked about trying to provide medical help, but there's no one around that needs medical help at the 59th Street car source at that point, is there?
Not that I noticed.
So you don't have any purpose there anymore, do you?
Other than...
So why not go home?
Because I was going to help people with provide first aid and medical assistance.
But that wasn't the reason you were there that night. You were there that night to protect the 59th Street car source.
It was one of the reasons I was there.
Oh, for Pete's sake. The love of God. This whole story is so crazy. It's just crazy.
Call in, connect. To speak to Randi, call 561-270-3844. 561-270-3844.
All right, so we're going to dip back in. Kyle Rittenhouse, obviously, on the stand, being cross-examined by the assistant DA of Kenosha, Thomas Binger, who was asking him, why do you feel so comfortable with the other people that all have AR-15s versus the people you say you are tending to for medical issues? What is that about? You know, why do you feel more comfortable with people who are similarly armed than you do with the rest of the people there? And he's still hedging. Okay, he's still saying, well, I just feel better in pairs. I just feel better in pairs. Look, this is so obvious what he was there thinking his job was. And he thought his job was to keep Kenosha safe from Antifa. We know that. I don't know, you know, the judge won't allow him to say stuff like that. But here you have a city where there's a military presence, essentially, that has been deployed by the police, by the Kenosha police. You got your MRAPs over there. You got your Bearcats. You got a police line of vehicles that has cleared out the place he thinks he's supposed to be protecting. And the reason why Kyle Rittenhouse thinks he's supposed to be protecting a place called Car Source on 59th Street in downtown Kenosha is because the owner of the Car Source apparently thought some kid from Antioch, Illinois should be asked to guard his place at gunpoint. This is what I'm saying. This whole setup, the whole story, the whole idea of asking a 17-year-old kid or similarly armed people, meaning people with ARs, to stand in front of your business to protect property when there is clearly a military-like presence by the police deployed in downtown Kenosha is so bizarre and ridiculous. And asking him questions as if he's like some really qualified medic or a really qualified police officer or a really qualified security guard is so strange. It's just such a bizarre trial. But that's what's needed here in order to finally get him to admit what he was really doing there.
And in fact, when you borrowed that fire extinguisher, you asked someone in that group to come along with you, right?
Yes.
Because you wanted someone there
who was armed
to protect you when you go down and put out what you think are some fires, right?
Yes.
Now he's a fireman
know
too.
That you're running into a crowd that is not friendly to you, right?
No.
That's why you had to say the word friendly, 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 because you knew this was a crowd that would not see you as friendly, correct?
I screamed friendly, friendly, friendly because somebody screamed burn inside.
I'm talking about when you crossed 60th. You yelled it then.
At that time, yes, but...
And no one in the crowd is yelling burn inside or anything along those lines, are they?
Not at that time.
And you also wanted someone from that group to come along with you when you're going to go down and put out a fire, because you knew full well that anyone running around like you putting fires out is going to cause a reaction in the crowd, a hostile reaction, correct?
I didn't think it would cause a negative reaction. I wanted somebody to come with me because you're better in pairs, and I thought there were other people at that Car Source before I got there.
This is what his lawyer told him to say. He keeps
Dominic,
repeating it.
if you're
pairs,
telling us
pairs,
that Dominic
pairs.
Black called you to run 3 blocks down the road to put out a fire at the 63rd Street Car Source, then you must have known at that moment that there wasn't anyone else down there, right? Why would you need to go if somebody's already down there?
Mr. Black said to me on the phone, hey, they're setting fires at the other car source. I need you to get down there and put out the fires. It must not have, I don't think it, I took it as there's not other people down there.
Why would you need to go 3 blocks down if there were already people there?
He's asking a question. This witness doesn't know the answer, whether there are people there or not.
He's told us he thought there were. So I'm probing the basis of that and his understanding at the time.
You can answer if you understand the question.
I'll repeat the question. Why would you need to run 3 blocks down to the 63rd car source if you thought there were already people there?
I thought there were people there, but Dominic asked me to go down there. I thought that was to help put out the fires that were down there.
This video that we're watching is minutes after you've left the 59th Street car source, right?
Yes.
And when you leave the 59th Street car source, you're with Ryan Balch.
Yes.
And then this reporter, Richie McGinnis.
Yes.
And as far as you know, when you leave 59th Street car source, everybody in your group is still back there, right?
At the car source.
At 59th Street car source.
Yes.
Everybody's still back there.
Yes.
Joanne Fiedler.
Yes.
Dustin Collette. Dominic Black. Nick Smith. Jason Lakowski. Anyone else. They're all still there, right?
At that location, yes.
So none of your group is already down at 63rd Street car source, right?
The other group that showed up after we got done taking the pictures with the, I think I said 2 or 3 vans, I believed they were still down there.
And that was 2 or 3 vans of people that came out with what have been described as melee weapons, right? Like bats and clubs and things like that. Do you recall that? First of all, do you recall that testimony?
I do.
Do you remember seeing those 2 or 3 vans come to that location?
I do.
Do you remember seeing people get out of those vans?
Yes, like I saw, I think there were 6 people, they, in total.
And you saw them with weapons?
I saw them with rifles. I don't think I remember melee weapons.
They were armed, correct?
Yes.
And you believed that they were going to be the ones protecting the 63rd Street car source, correct?
Yes.
So at this point in time in the evening, had anybody told you that those folks had left the 63rd Street car source?
No.
So when you're running with this fire extinguisher, you think there's already a group that's designated to that spot that's still down there, right?
Yes.
So again, why do you feel that you needed to run 3 blocks down there with a fire extinguisher if you thought there were already people down there protecting that property?
Because Dominic called me and asked me to go help put out the fires down there.
And in that phone call, Dominic never told you that any of the members of the 59th Street group that you were part of, he never said any of them were down there at 63rd, right?
Yes.
And he never told you that the group that was supposed to be down there, he never told you anything about them, whether they were there or not there. He never mentioned them. Fair?
It didn't come up.
And you asked the people that you got the fire extinguisher from to come with you, right?
Yes.
You were looking for Ryan Balch for backup, right?
I was looking around for him, yes.
You had already tried to go back to the 59th Street location, right?
Yes.
And all of those failed?
Yes.
So then you decide to take it upon yourself to head down to 63rd Street to put out fires. Fair?
I wouldn't say that. I would say I went to go put out the fires that I was there to do. When I say protect the property, I mean by like put out fires.
Okay, I'll explain this.
This is the Randi Rhodes Show. To speak with Randi, dial 561-270-3844. That's 561-270-3844.
Okay, so the prosecution is trying to get to what was in his head, okay? Like his intentions, his intent, his mindset. Why in the world did this kid, who fancies himself as a high school dropout medic / police officer / security guard, now firefighter, why does he leave the place he believed he was called to protect on 59th Street, why does he now go down to 63rd Street where his pack of armed comrades, okay, are stationed? They're stationed. Okay, this is so sick. And so the prosecutor is trying to show that Kyle Rittenhouse went down there to what he thought protect property. Why is that important? Because in Wisconsin, you cannot use deadly force to protect property. Okay. And the intention of this kid to go down there to group up with this other armed pack of people was either to protect property or to create violence. And the prosecutor is trying to get him to admit a couple of things here. One, that he was simply believing he had to go protect property. Two, the property didn't even need to be protected at this point because the police had set up like entire lines of heavy vehicles, of MRAPs and Bearcats and Duramaxes and the whole 9 yards, right? And so why is he doing this? That is the point of asking him these questions. He's setting up something he wants everybody to watch, the prosecutor is.
What happened to that TV?
He needs a producer.
Mr. Rittenhouse, this is a video that has been admitted into evidence as exhibit number 73. This is a video taken by a drone that was hovering south of 63rd at the time that you shot Mr. Rosenbaum. We're going to play the beginning of this video on the iPad, and I'm going to have Detective Howard use the pinch and zoom feature on the iPad to zoom in on the area.
Your Honor, I'm going to object to this, and I'd like to be heard outside the presence of the jury.
All right, he's going to...
Perfect time for a break, don't you think?
Yeah, they're going to break.
Let's take a break. Please
Okay.
don't talk about the case during the break. Read, watch, or listen to it.
Okay, so that is as far as we've gotten today. Okay, this is just so bizarre. The whole situation is crazy. It's absolutely bat crap. So let's regroup. Okay, so what happened this morning was very strange. Kyle Rittenhouse took the stand today in his own defense, which, you know, we're not used to seeing, right? You really never do see a defendant take the stand in a murder trial. So why are we watching Kyle Rittenhouse, who is facing 6 charges, okay? And there's murder involved in 2 of them, reckless and, intentional. And so why are we seeing him take the stand? Well, because his defense is self-defense. And in the case of self-defense, you have to get inside of the defendant's mind and figure out what he was so afraid of that caused him to use deadly force. Now, in the end, we know that he used deadly force against an unarmed guy, which we're about to look at, which is why the defense just objected. They don't really want to revisit the slaying, the shooting of this Rosenbaum man who Kyle Rittenhouse kills because Rosenbaum has no weapons. What Rosenbaum has is a clear bag, a baggie. Ever been to the hospital, anybody? You know that when they discharge you, whatever you came in with, whatever belongings you had, are placed in a bag for safekeeping. And when you're discharged, they give you back your stuff in that bag. And that's what Mr. Rosenbaum had. He had just been discharged from the hospital, and he had the bag of his belongings, a clear bag. And in that bag were things like shirts and socks, toothpaste, and a toothbrush, like that. That's what Mr. Rosenbaum had when Kyle Rittenhouse decided to kill him. And it's simply because Kyle Rittenhouse viewed him as a hostile to what Kyle Rittenhouse believed he was there to do. And what Kyle Rittenhouse has testified to that he was there to do in his mind was to protect property. a car source on 59th Street in downtown Kenosha. Now, he doesn't kill Mr. Rosenbaum at the 59th Street car source. No, he is actually getting a phone call from one of his comrades, similarly armed, at another location 3 blocks away. And this is 11:30 at night after the police have dispersed all the protesters, cleared the downtown area. They had a 8 o'clock curfew in the city that night. And so the police felt that they could close the streets down. They could use basically a military presence, because that's what our police forces in Kenosha, Wisconsin look like these days, where the police have military vehicles. They have MRAPs, and they have Bearcats, and they have, Duramax. They have tanks. But Kyle Rittenhouse believes that even though the police have tanks, and even though there's a fire department, and even though there is an ambulance service, and even though it's a regular city, his presence is needed to do medical. His presence is needed to do property protection. His presence is needed to put out fires. This is bizarre. Okay, this is just crazy. And the reason why it's somewhat believable that he could think any of those things were needed in that city that night, knowing that the police were there, is because A, he's only 17 years old. He's a child, and nobody would give a child an AR-15 or any authority over any citizen in any city unless they were part of a group that hated the protesters. That is the problem. That is what we're dealing with now in America. We're dealing with a police force that actually was kind and nice and encouraging of not just a 17-year-old, but a 17-year-old who just testified that vans full of people with melee weapons, meaning clubs and chains and rifles, were deployed as being real security forces or real anything on the streets of Kenosha, and that the police were kind and accepting of this situation. And we know that the police were accepting of this situation because we've all seen the video prior to this situation becoming this situation, where the police are giving water to these armed dudes, these young teenage kids. And the police are encouraging, that they see these guys with their AR-15s and their long guns and the police are like, cool with the whole thing, because the police feel that those guys are friendly to the police and that the protesters are unfriendly to the police. And that is why Kyle Rittenhouse views the people who the police feel are unfriendly to the police as unfriendly to him. And that's what makes him hang on to this weapon while he's supposedly going to another location to put out fires. The prosecutor just said to him, so you went to put out a fire with your AR-15 that had 50 rounds of ammo in it. Why did you take your AR-15 with you to a property 3 blocks away to put out a fire? You had put your weapon down before. Why don't you put it down now if you're And he admits that he doesn't feel safe from those people who had already been cleared out. And the people that are at the 63rd Street location are his people. They're his peeps. And that we have a situation in America where you could have illegal possession of an AR-15 with 50 rounds in it by a 17-year-old who is somehow feeling deputized by a fire department, deputized by a police department, deputized by the owner of a freaking car place, and encouraged to patrol to protect property is such a sick commentary on where we are. And remember, the only people that died were the ones he killed.
Mary had a little lamb, the fault.
We believe that all men are created equal.
To the magnificent mosaic that is America.
From radio beacon to radio beacon. I have a dream today. Change has come to America.
Believe me.
Help is on the way.
Knock, knock. Who's there?
It's a figment of your imagination.
Randi Rhodes Show. Turn up your mind.
All right, so they are in a break right now in the trial. The judge has excused the jury for about 20 minutes. Why? Why? Because the prosecution wants to show a video that's already been entered into evidence. So what's the problem, right? Yeah, it's already been entered into evidence, meaning it was agreed to as a piece of evidence by the court. It was agreed to by the court. But the prosecutor wants to use the commonly used feature on an iPhone, which he has on his iPad too, which you know is to touch it, pinch, and zoom, right? Everybody does it every day. We all do it, right? Well, this judge is 74 years old. His name is Judge Bruce Schroeder. And he doesn't understand, that we do this every day on the iPhones and on the iPads and on other kinds of phones and devices, that we can actually zoom in to a picture and get a closer look at something in the frame. This judge says he doesn't know about that. He doesn't understand that. He doesn't, want the jury to see something that adds pixels. Swear to God. He doesn't want the jury to see something that would alter the image. He doesn't want them to see something that is already accepted evidence, zoomed in on, because he thinks that's something a crime lab has to do. And so he took a 20-minute break so he could figure out whether or not he needs to get an expert to testify to the fact that it doesn't alter the image, it just zooms in on the actual image. Swear to God. This judge is very, very, I want to call him uppity. Do you know what I mean? I do. This judge has a lot of problems with a lot of different things all the time. He had a problem with Kyle Rittenhouse's crying. He had to adjourn to let Kyle Rittenhouse, get his crap together because he broke down crying on the stand. First of all, he's a badass, right? Kyle Rittenhouse is a badass with an AR-15 on the night of the killings. Now, all of a sudden, he's being, asked to have a look-see at what he did, and he breaks down crying on the stand. And the judge, out of sympathy for this double murderer, actually gave him, a break so he could get his stuff together. Listen, he's such a badass, this Kyle Rittenhouse is, that I expected him to get on the stand armed. I mean, this guy is totally connected to his weapon at all times. We should probably point out that he took the stand unarmed today. And we're here to discuss killings, the only ones that took place by vigilantes this summer. The killing was done by the guy on the stand, the only ones. And maybe this judge doesn't even want to call it killings. Maybe he wants to call it altercations with bullets. Maybe that's the preferred verbiage that this particular judge, because this judge has objected to his own rulings. I mean, this is such a strange courtroom. Now, I want you to remember that the prosecutor in the case should get leeway. Why? Why, Rand? Why? Because you're on the side of the prosecutor? No, not at all. Because the prosecutor has the burden of proof. Remember, Kyle Rittenhouse walked into this courtroom presumed innocent. You understand that? That's why all of this stuff has to go on with rulings and looking at evidence and looking and admitting it and shielding the jury's eyes from his previous behavior, right? Because it could lend an air of this kid is a bad kid to the jury, and that's what, and Kyle is presumed innocent, and so the judge does have to shield Kyle Rittenhouse's rights. But the prosecution has the burden of proving the 6 charges that this kid faces beyond a reasonable doubt, which is a very high burden. And that's why the prosecution shouldn't be told that it can't zoom in on an iPad. But this judge is doing it anyway. And it isn't out of an abundance of caution. It's out of ignorance. The judge seriously doesn't understand an iPhone because he's 74 freaking years old. And that is frightening because now the prosecution would like to use a piece of evidence that's already been admitted in his cross-examination of Kyle Rittenhouse, who killed 2 people and wounded a 3rd. But I will say this hysteria, this breakdown that Kyle had on the stand, you know, it shows you that this is a person who should never have a gun. Why? Because he's so freaking emotional. He's 17. That's what he is. He's an emotional 17-year-old who views himself as a badass. He plays Call of Duty. He thinks it's all a video game. At this point in his life, he's only 17 years old. But he got on the stand today, and he showed you that he's still just a child who was scared. He was scared of the people.
I was cornered from in front of me with Mr. Zeminski, and there were there were 3 people right there.
Take a deep breath, Kyle.
That's what That's what I run.
We're going to just take time for our break anyway. You can just relax for a minute, sir. We're going to take a break about 10 minutes.
Okay, way to go, Kyle. You know, your badass persona just evaporated, and you just killed any chance you had at hosting a right-wing radio talk show. There's no crying in MAGA. Oh, my God. It's because he's 17 years old. You understand that? And this is what's going to go on the jury's head. Do we really want to ruin his life because he killed 2 people and blew off another guy's biceps? Do we really want to ruin his life? But there's no crying in MAGA world unless you're doing it while you talk about how much you love Donald Trump, right? Then you could just, you know. But honestly, what you were seeing there, you know, some people, I saw them saying, oh, it's an act. This is the performance of a lifetime. No, he's a child, okay? He's a 17-year-old. And the police and his mother that drove him there with this illegal gun, all these people contributed to the situation in which he finds himself today, on a stand under oath defending himself from murder. That's what the adults who are MAGA are doing. They're so worried about critical race theory and teaching history, and as if we can't look anything we want to know up on the internets now, right? To the point where they're going and threatening school board members. Oh, the innocence of my child. You will not teach my child American history because it's disturbing. The history is disturbing. It involves killing and genocide and, you know, prejudice and hatred and lynching and all kinds of violence against people. Well, we don't want our children exposed to that, as if they can't look it up on the internet. But we do want our 17-year-olds to be exposed to parents who would drive them with an AR-15, an illegal one, to protect the car source in Kenosha. Yeah, that's fine.
All things Randi at RandiRhodes.com.
Go for launch.
Speaking truth to power, the Randi Rhodes Show.
Everybody that you shot at that night, you intended to kill, correct?
I didn't intend to kill them. I intended to stop the people who were attacking me.
By killing them?
I did what I had to do to stop the person who was attacking me.
By killing them?
2 of them passed away, but I stopped the threat from attacking me.
By using deadly force?
I used deadly force.
That you knew was going to kill?
I didn't know if it was going to kill them, but I used deadly force to stop the threat that was attacking me.
You intentionally used deadly force against Joseph Rosenbaum, correct?
Yes.
You intentionally used deadly force against the man who came and tried to kick you in the face,
yes.
Correct? You intentionally used deadly force against Anthony Huber, correct?
Yes.
You intentionally used deadly force against Gage Grosskreutz, correct?
Yes.
With regard to Joseph Rosenbaum, you fired 4 shots at him, correct?
Yes.
You intended to kill him, correct?
I didn't intend to kill him. I intended to stop the person who was attacking me and trying to steal my gun.
So you were protecting your gun. Oh, you're not allowed to do that either, you know. No, this kid is somebody who literally took the life of 2 people and wounded really severely a third because he didn't like them, because he didn't like what they were saying to him, because he didn't like them. He went there. He went there with the intention of using that gun. That's why he brought that gun. You don't bring a loaded gun. You don't bring a loaded AR-15 with 50 rounds in it to a protest, unless you fancy yourself some enforcer. And that is the problem with the whole thing here, is that there are people who are rooting for this kid who was driven by his mother to Kenosha with an illegal AR-15 because he's only 17 years old. He's not entitled. He's not rightfully allowed to have that weapon. And now maybe you understand why we don't give 17-year-olds AR-15s legally in this here country, at least not now, maybe next year. It's because they are emotionally unable to make wise choices about A, where to bring them, why you're bringing them, and the results of bringing them to a protest. It's ridiculous. Ridiculous. And this kid, his life is ruined because that is what the adults around him allowed to happen to him and allowed him to cause other people to suffer from his behavior. Death and wounding. I mean, this is just so unbelievable, but this judge is really out there. I mean, he is literally, I get that the judge feels that, the judge is in charge of the courtroom. I get that. I understand that. We should all understand that. But this judge is not understanding that the prosecution has a burden, a high burden, and that this piece of evidence that's already been admitted as evidence isn't going to do anything weird if you zoom in on it that could prejudice the jury about what is already on the piece of evidence that is a videotape. I mean, it's very bizarre. And earlier today, there was a big, there was a dust up, right, with this judge who just started screaming at the prosecutor. They were arguing over opening the door, which the defense did, about the use of the weapon in defense of property. And why is that a big damn deal? Well, it's a big damn deal because you can't use deadly force to protect property. You can't use deadly force to protect the car source on 59th Street or the car source on 63rd Street. It's ridiculous.
That's what I did. Held it open with a bias towards denial. Why would you think that made it okay for you, without any advance notice, to bring this matter before the jury? I was astonished when you began your examination by commenting on the defendant's post-arrest silence. That's basic law. It's been basic law in this country for 40 years, 50 years. I have no idea why you would do something like that. and it gives, well, I'll leave it at that. So I don't know what you're up to.
May I respond?
Yes.
We filed an other acts motion on this exact issue because, in my mind, and I argued this, it is identical to what was going on the night of August 25th, in the sense that the defendant was using this exact same weapon. He was using it in a manner to try and protect property.
Right.
No, he wasn't.
There's, Your Honor, with all due respect,
I'm not going to rehash the motion. That's absolutely untrue. No. Your arguments of record, my comments are of record, and why I ruled as I did is of record. There's nothing that I heard in this trial to suggest anything's changed, even if you're correct in your assumption that you know more than I did at the time. You should have come to the court and say, I want to go into this. Why you would think that you could go into it without any advance notice to the court, I don't understand that. And as the defense is pointing out, you're an experienced trial lawyer, and this should not have been gone into.
Your Honor, there have been things in this case, testimony in this case, that I believe opens the door.
Right. Open the door. And when you open a door, you're allowed to go through it. That's why the phrase is open the door. Okay. But anyway, they're arguing about Kyle Rittenhouse bringing an AR-15 to a assignment. How do we even describe the fact that you had an adult owner of two businesses, at least, right? The Car Source on 59th Street, the Car Source on 63rd in Kenosha, relying on a child, an armed child, to protect this property. And that's what Kyle Rittenhouse has testified to, and that's what everybody has testified to who had anything to do with this Car Source, that the owner of the Car Source wanted these kids, this one in particular, to guard his property with an AR-15 strapped around him. What kind of freaking adult does that? This is crazy. That's why I keep saying this is a nutty situation. This is just bizarro world that America has gotten to this point where not only do we want vigilantism, and not only do we want our vigilantes armed to the teeth with 50 rounds in an AR-15, no, but we also want them to be underage. We want them to be child soldiers to protect a Car Source, to protect a stupid business in Kenosha. How sickening is this? The good news is Kyle is likely to get away with murder. The bad news is he probably squandered any opportunity to be a MAGA hero because he cried on the stand. So maybe he'll just fade into infamy and obscurity. Hey, I wonder if George Zimmerman needs a roommate. Yeah, Zimmerman. You know what Zimmerman did? He sold the gun he murdered Trayvon with for $250,000. These are nice people.
Call in, connect. To speak to Randi, call 561-270-3844. 561-270-3844.
In the pictures released by the district attorney, Kyle Rittenhouse can be seen going into Pudgy's Pub in Mount Pleasant with his mother, Wendy, in the early afternoon of January 5th.
Who does
Court
that?
documents say Rittenhouse was wearing a T-shirt with the words "free as F-word" on the front, and that within minutes of arriving at the bar, he was serenaded by 5 men singing a song known to be the anthem of the Proud Boys, white supremacist group. In the pictures, he could be seen flashing the OK sign, which has been co-opted as a sign of white power by known white supremacist groups, say the prosecutors. The Illinois teen is also seen drinking 3 beers in the 90 minutes he was in the bar.
Oh my God.
While that is illegal in Illinois, in Wisconsin it is allowed because he was with a parent.
That is so sick. I can't even express to you. Like, what is wrong with his mother? Honestly, what is wrong? His mother must be like heavy-duty MAGA to allow her child to go into a bar in the middle of the afternoon, no less, drink 3 beers in 90 minutes with a bunch of Proud Boys who are flashing a white power sign on the TV. See, this is the evidence that the judge won't let in. This is the evidence that they felt that the door was opened to when Kyle Rittenhouse talked about some after he was arrested behavior. Okay, he brought it up. And that's why the prosecutor felt that the door was opened and he could ask him about these things because he testified about things that happened after he was arrested. He also gave interviews. I don't know if this won't come into the courtroom either. This is why the defense got so irate, right? But Kyle gave interviews to the Daily Caller, obviously local news. Obviously, he gave an interview to the Washington Post. Those of us who read the paper know about that. I think one interview he gave was either to GQ or some other magazine, but he's been talking his brains out, okay? He's been telling everybody everything, but they want to keep it out of the courtroom because this guy is flaunting his MAGA-ness. And it's really sad. So what charges is he facing? All right, well, under Wisconsin law, murder is called homicide. Okay, so he is facing first-degree reckless homicide. First-degree reckless homicide. Okay, that is recklessly causing the death of another human being, showing utter disregard for human life. You don't need intent to prove first-degree reckless homicide in Wisconsin. This is the charge he faces because he killed unarmed Joe Rosenbaum. It is a Class B felony, and it has a basic sentence of up to 60 years, which would make him, if he did the whole thing, 77 years old, right? I'm not saying he would serve it all. But then he also faces first-degree reckless endangering safety, right? So this is recklessly endangering another person's safety, showing utter disregard for human life. This is what he's charged with, according to the criminal complaint, when he fired shots at Rosenbaum, but he hit the videographer who was there recording all this, a guy named Roger McGinnis, and also an unknown male who is seen in the video. It is a Class F felony. It's got a sentence of about 12 and a half years in prison, a fine of $25,000, or both for each count, and there are two. He also faces a first-degree intentional homicide. Okay, so intentional homicide is what he's accused of doing to Anthony Huber. That is a Class A felony. That is a life in prison sentence, okay? This crime is... It's first-degree murder is what it is. It's causing the death of another human being with the intent to kill that person or someone else without mitigating circumstances specified in law. And one of those things that I'm telling you about is you can't do that in defense of property. That's just not accepted as a legitimate reason to commit first-degree intentional homicide. He's also charged with attempted first-degree intentional homicide in Gage Grosskreutz, who was struck and wounded. That is a Class B felony. That carries a basic sentence of 60 years. And he's also charged with possession of a dangerous weapon by a person under 18. I think that's self-evident that he did that. Wisconsin is an open carry state. It's legal for adults to carry firearms openly. But minors are not free to do so. He was 17 at the time that he crossed state lines from Illinois to Wisconsin with an AR-15 and 50 rounds of ammo. Now, people are going to, the people that really want to root for him, I don't know why you would want to root for this. I don't know what it is about a guy who shoots two people and then who kills two people and then viciously wounds a third person. I don't know what it is about that guy that makes you love him. Maybe it's the white power thing. Maybe it's the Proud Boys thing. Maybe it's the MAGA thing. Maybe it's his mom, the MAGA, or maybe it's all of that. But that is super sick and really twisted. Because after he killed Rosenbaum, who was unarmed, Don't you think that if you were in that crowd, you might view him as an active shooter and want to disarm him? Don't you think that your decency as a person, whether you're a maggot or not, whether you're an Al-Qaeda, the base or not, would kick in if you saw a child with an AR-15 kill an unarmed man? Don't you think your instinct would be to try to stop him? Don't you think your instinct would be to do exactly what Anthony Huber did? Don't you think your instinct would be... I mean, you can't even compare yourself to Gage Grosskreutz, because that man was so brave. That man is somebody that you should look up to. Put his hands up in the air and surrendered himself to a kid who had already killed 2 people in an effort to de-escalate the situation in a peaceful manner, and got his bicep blown off. That is bravery. That is unbelievable behavior for a mere mortal, and yet that's what Grosskreutz did within 3 feet of Kyle Rittenhouse. He literally put his hands up in the air. And guess what Kyle did? He pulled the trigger and tried to kill him, except there was no round in the chamber. And at that point, Gage gave up on the peaceful surrender thing and lunged at him to try and get the weapon. And he was armed too, because it's Wisconsin. And now they're trying to use the fact that Gage had a gun, which everyone in Wisconsin has apparently, even the minors, as justification for Kyle Rittenhouse to not accept his surrender, his peaceable surrender. Take a shot at him, but, you know, no bullet. Do you understand how far off the decency path we are right now? Do you have any clue?
Brutality. This is the Randi Rhodes Show. To speak with Randi, dial 561-270-3844. That's 561-270-3844.
So you're telling us that the reason that you wanted Dominic to buy you an AR-15 as opposed to a pistol is the only reason was because you felt you couldn't lawfully possess a pistol?
Correct.
You didn't pick out the AR-15 for any other reason?
I thought it looked cool, but no.
You didn't pick it out because you wanted to go hunting with it, did you?
No.
You didn't pick it out because you were going to use it to protect your house, correct?
Correct.
You picked it out because it looked cool.
I thought it looked cool. Guess that's the reason, yes.
It resembled the types of weapons that are used in first-person shooter video games, correct?
I don't really play first-person shooter video games. I have, but I believe there's a variety of guns, including shotguns, pistols. There's guns in video games that resemble all guns.
Isn't it true
but
when
you
would hang out with Dominic Black, you'd play Call of Duty and other first-person shooter video games?
Sometimes.
And those are games in which you use weapons like AR-15s to pretty much shoot anybody who comes at you, correct?
It's a video game where 2 players are playing together. I don't really understand the meaning of your question, to be honest.
Isn't one of the things people do in these video games try and kill everyone else with your guns?
Yeah, in the video game, it's just a video game. It's not real life.
I thought you didn't play, but I do play. I played with Dominic, and Dominic's the guy that bought him the gun. Dominic is the guy that bought him the gun. I mean, to do this with a 17-year-old is just, it's unconscionable. It's sick. And all of these, concerned parents out there who are so concerned about what their children are exposed to at school, and it might be history, and it might actually be real history. You are such front-running phonies when you defend Kyle Rittenhouse, because he was surrounded by people that were unable to take care of him, unable to protect him, unable to raise him to the age of 18 without facing murder charges. This is really sad. It's a sad, sad situation. I mean, I feel bad for this kid. I feel bad for him because he was in a situation where the adults were not only playing Call of Duty with the 17-year-old, but actually helping him purchase an AR-15 and 50 rounds of ammo. And then, you know, he gets in a car and he drives himself to Kenosha, Wisconsin, okay, because his Facebook page is loaded with his heroes, and his heroes are all law enforcement guys. I mean, he thinks he's going to protect the police. That's how turned around he is. That's how his thinking is so jumbled from the people, the adults around him. And now he's sitting on a witness stand in his own defense, having killed 2 people and wounded a third, because he thought that at 17, it was okay to own, possess, and travel over state lines with an AR-15 and 50 rounds of ammunition. And nobody in his life bothered to tell him no. It's really sad. And then his mother, after he is, you know, arrested and after he's let out on bail, right? His mother takes him to a bar in the middle of the afternoon where he's greeted by Proud Boys and sang to by Proud Boys. And his mother is there, which is crazy. But in Wisconsin, a 17-year-old can have beers as long as your mommy is there with you. How sick is that? Who, A, thinks it's okay to go to a bar when you're a minor with your mother? What mother thinks it's okay to take her minor child who just got bail out of, you know, he's free on bail for and facing 6 charges, 3 of them are murder charges, takes him to a bar full of Proud Boys in the middle of the afternoon? I mean, come on, people. Do you not understand how this entire society is letting children down, and not because they're teaching them American history? He's a high school dropout. His father is not there. His mother and father are divorced. She's like a nurse's assistant. She says she was asleep. She didn't know anything that, you know, when all this happened, she was sleeping. And she didn't know her son was out there murdering people. She didn't know till after. But when she did know, she took him to a bar. And this is the kind of stuff that they don't want the jury to know. Lance in Ohio.
Hi, Randy. How you doing there?
All right. How are you? Where are you in Ohio?
Good. Oh, right. I'm in this little dinky town here. Let's see. Where am I? You know, I go across the country.
Are you a driver? Are you a driver?
Yes.
Yes. Thank you.
Yes, I drive the big. Yes, I drive. I bring the TP and all that other good stuff that we all need, Randy.
Yay! Yay, you! We need more of you. We need. You know what the whole problem is, right? You would know. There's a trucker shortage right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you know what? It's not going to get any better because, you know, to be honest, Randy, this is something you can't fake. You can't rush. It's either they're qualified or they're not. Because when you're driving an 80,000-pound bullet, you know, you got to know what you're doing, you know.
Hey, man, listen, I did it. I did it for a year, and I'll never forget the scariest day of my life. Have you ever driven around?
Really?
Yeah. Have you ever? I drove a Peterbilt. Have you ever?
You did?
Oh, yeah.
I drove the Cadillac. Okay.
Yeah. Well, I drove for a Wisconsin company, which is why I know Wisconsin. I drove for. They're out of business, but they were called Badger Lines, and I drove for them. I'll never forget the scariest day of my life. Have you ever been down Rocky Top with your rig? Have you ever gone down there?
No, I haven't.
Okay, so you've probably done some mountains, though. You know how they have the runaway lanes?
Oh, no.
I was never so scared. That day, I was terrified. Let me tell you.
I bet you will. I bet you was.
I was.
and Randy, it's even more scary when it's winter time.
Yeah.
And you're going through the Smoky Mountains.
Yeah.
and there's a little bit of snow, and these trucks are coming around me like, I said, are you serious?
Yeah.
You know,
it's terrifying. It is. It's terrifying.
It is.
Yeah.
It is. But what I wanted to tell you real quick was, you know, everybody's talking about this kid, but why didn't they prosecute his parents if they brought him? You know, because they, you know, if he came with his parents or whatever, they need to prosecute them too.
You know, I think I've said that his mother drove him, and I don't think that's right. I think he drove himself. I think his mother has told the press that she was asleep when he went there. The beef I have with her is that she knew he had an AR-15, number one, and didn't do anything to stop this kid from having one. And two, she takes him to a bar in the middle of the afternoon. And you know what's crazy? In Wisconsin, that's legal. You can go to a bar with your parent. You can drink as long as your parent is there. Yeah, you can.
Wow.
I know.
She needs a whack in the head.
But I will tell you this. She did some heavy-duty fundraising off of this. She raised like $100,000. She literally had $1.20 in her bank account before this, and now she's got like $100,000 sitting there, all from the right-wing lunatic fringe that wants her son to be their hero, instead of understanding that this kid has been so misled by the adults around him and feeling bad for him because his life is over. He's going to go to jail for one of these things, maybe three of them that I can tell. But it's just it's so tragic that the adults around these kids who are MAGA adults who go to like the school board meetings and threaten the lives of school boards and threaten the lives of Congress members, insurrectionists, that this is who they are. And they have children.
It's just crazy.
It is.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's upsetting. It's wrong. And, I hear you. But the reason why she hasn't been charged with anything is because she didn't break any law. She just didn't. But, yeah, she fundraised like crazy off of this. And he became a conservative darling. And I have to tell you, if that's what you want America to be more like, if that's what you're rooting for, then you have no clue what America is really about. These are un-American values, okay? Very contrary to the values that I grew up with, that I raised my kids with. Well, I only have the one. But you better check yourself, because you're going down a really dark, bad road. 17 years old, AR-15. Okay, yep.